Hey there, Paul David Thompson here, full-time real estate investor, no longer dependent on a day job, and today we're talking about land trust. What is a land trust and why should you use them? Well, first off, let's just define what a land trust is. And it is simply a trust that is generated with the intention of holding title to land, to real estate. And as a real estate investor, you are doing this ultimately to create anonymity. And what we're doing is we're taking your personal name or your LLC name off of public records using a specifically designed kind of trust. And a land trust is just one specific type of trust. And trust can be quite a broad subject. And I am not a lawyer and I'm not giving any legal advice here. I'm just sharing with you how I use trust in my business in order to effectively take my name off of public record. What happens is when you start developing a lot of properties, you start worrying about that potential lawsuit. And what we're thinking about is asset protection. What could you do to make things less likely to get a suit and more difficult for a suit to be filed against you? That's effectively what we're doing when we're dealing with land trust. And there are a litany of other benefits along with doing this method. So let's talk about, first off, what a trust is to begin with. So in our case, a trust has a grantor. This is the person making or creating the trust. And then you have a trust is created. And then a trust has a trustee, some third party who, in the case of a land trust, holds title to the property. And this is typically not you. And then there is a beneficiary. And these are the three required components of a trust: the maker, the trustee, and the beneficiary of this trust. This is done commonly with people's personal residence, to put their personal residence into a living trust so that they can set up their estate. So for when they pass away, then it follows the trust law. So in the case of a land trust, we are doing a specific deal where we're doing a grantor title holding trust. So what does that mean? Well, a grantor title holding trust basically says that the grantor is making it with the intent of holding title. That is the simple summary of what we're trying to do with a land trust. Between you and me and people who are real estate investors, we refer to land trusts, but that confuses often people in the world who aren't kind of up on this. So what I tend to say is, on my document, I say grantor title holding trust. And because it's more descriptive, that seems to kind of go over well. They kind of get their head around that better than just saying land trust. People kind of get this like murky look in their face, like, what is a land trust? You're trying to do something funny here. No, I'm just trying to put a property into trust, which is a very common thing to do. Okay, so what are the benefits of doing this? Well, if you don't use a trust and you have title will show up in your personal name or an LLC or corporation or whatever that you set up. And so your personal name obviously is you, and it's easy to follow who that is, or an LLC, which creates liability protection. However, oftentimes the members or the managers of the LLC are not anonymous. So it's public knowledge. It's easy to find out who the members of an LLC are. So if someone wants to make it a point to go and find all your properties, they can if your LLC shows up on title for all your properties. So one way to obfuscate, kind of hide the fact of what you own, is by putting into a trust and then having a trustee be the person who actually shows up on title. And this can be a lawyer, it could be a third-party trust bank that you actually hire, it can be a trusted friend, a financial friend, it could be a family member. And oftentimes what you'll see is it'll be like J. Smith. This might be your cousin that lives across state lines or out of the county, and it's Julie Smith and J. Smith. Well, who is J. Smith? Well, it's kind of hard to track that person down. So you basically put something like that on there, a friend or an attorney who's willing to process that information if it comes to you. And if a suit is to be filed, then they file it against whoever the trustee is. And that trustee may have resigned by this point. You may have asked that person to resign, or they have no personal liability to this. They just are acting as trustee, and they are not supposed to give up who the beneficiary is unless they're like put into a court of law and said they must. And only when a judge says you must disclose will they disclose. That's the idea behind it. So it's just like another layer to the onion of asset protection. Now, what's interesting is, talking about asset protection, who should this beneficiary be? Well, this beneficiary is you. It could be you, your personal name, but I wouldn't recommend that. Because when you make the beneficiary your personal name, you are not creating any liability protection. A trust does not legally create any liability protection. So if they were to come through and figure out who owns the beneficiary, then and they file suit against you, then you are personally liable if your personal name is here. So this should be your company, LLC, or corporation. Some entity that provides asset protection. Typically, it's an LLC, if you're starting it fresh, probably. So the LLC is your beneficiary, and then, of course, under here are the members of your LLC. So what that does is it hides the fact of who this is. Somebody's going to do a lot of work in order to find out who that is. And that's all we're trying to do, is make it more difficult. This is not a lawsuit, a perfect way to never get sued. You could still get sued when you put it in a trust. It just makes it one layer deep harder, because if you say have 40 properties and you have 40 different trusts, that person who is the lawyer that is doing an asset check may not realize how many properties you actually own, and may not think you're a big fish. That's the idea behind doing it this way. It's just kind of have some stealth wealth, be kind of fly below the radar. Okay, so what are the kind of the caveats of doing a trust? There's a drawback. Well, one drawback is there's additional paperwork involved, and you have to go and find a trustee, somebody that you trust. And that's a very important detail, is the trustee needs to be a trusted person. They legally have title. They could go and sell the properties out from underneath you. It would be against your trust agreement, and you could sue them for that. But why create a situation where you're afraid that the person that you're working with is not trusted? You want them to be a very close financial friend or family member, or somebody that you're paying that has insurance, like a lawyer or something. So, or a trust company, which costs money. Your friends will do it for free, most likely. A trust company, they're going to charge you some retainer fee per year to be your trustee per property. So it can add up. So what are the drawbacks of having your property in a trust? Well, the additional complexity, the different paperwork. Well, there's also this problem of getting bank financing. When you go to get bank financing, some banks just don't like to see it's different, so they kind of balk at the idea that it's in a trust. And I've been able to work through some banks getting that taken care of, but I've had other banks that say they just will not do it. No. And furthermore, if you're doing 30-year fixed type loans where you're getting Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac type loans, those typically need to be in your personal name anyway. So you're not going to be able to put it into a trust and then still get financing. You have to do those in your personal name, and then later on transfer those into a trust if you wish. And that's an important detail to think about, is say you buy a property and it's, we'll call it 123 Main Street. The way this shows up on title is you make a trustee as, we'll call him J. Smith from the example before, and then the beneficiary is your LLC. We'll call it buyer LLC. And the trustee, and so the way this will show up on title in the county records is like this: 123 Main Street, J. Smith as trustee. That's how it appears on public record. And what's really cool is you can have J. Smith resign like the day after, and then you can have a alternate trustee stand in its place, and they don't do anything until you want to actually sell the property or get some sort of bank financing or something. That's the only time that they had to do anything, and all they're doing is signing their name, and they don't really have any serious responsibilities. Some states require the trustee have some responsibilities, so you have to definitely check with this on your legal counsel in your state to make sure that you're doing things appropriate to your state laws. Every state's a little bit different. So, and this is how this is titled in the trustee. So, bank financing can be tough. So what you sometimes do is you go ahead and buy it in your personal name. You buy it in your LLC name or your personal name. And then you subsequently transfer it into a trust like this. So after you get your financing in place, you transfer it into this structure where there is a land trust set up. And so what you kind of think of it as is maybe a better way to draw it would be like this. Here's the property, and here's the land trust is like this. And 123 Main Street, J. Smith as trustee. J. Smith as trustee. So and this is 123 Main Street. There's 123 Main Street. It is now titled into a trust titled as 123 Main Street, J. Smith as trustee, and then whatever's up here is now your beneficial interest. And so this is really important when you do this, just to remember that, I really recommend you doing this as some sort of a liability protected entity, not your personal name. When you buy properties in your personal name, you are just so vulnerable, and a trust doesn't fix it. You want to stack them. You want a land trust, then an LLC as your beneficiary. So that is the basic of land trust and how to use land trust. Let me know down below what you think, what questions you have. Are you using land trust? And what further questions do you have? I'll be happy to add more detail. I have a podcast called Ready Investor One. I'm looking forward to hearing more from you. Hey, if you enjoyed the video, make sure and give it a like and subscribe to the channel so you can watch future videos, and make sure and hit the notification button so you can get notified when new videos are posted. And right now, I have additional videos for you right here.